Linda Fields. On February 24, 2000, at approximately 1:38 in the afternoon, the body of 37-year-old Linda Fields was discovered in the front yard of 1132 Lake Avenue in Racine, Wisconsin, lying beneath a low-hanging pine tree near the lakefront. The Milwaukee Medical Examiner's Office determined she had been strangled by hand. She had last been seen alive 2 days earlier, on February 22nd. She was a mother and a sister. Her son Carl later told reporters that her spirit and her influence remained very much a part of their lives. Her younger sister Kathy called Linda her role model. For 23 years, the person who took Linda Fields' life walked free. His DNA was on her body. It was in every database law enforcement had access to, and it matched no one. Investigator Steve Mike led the original probe, interviewing countless witnesses over weeks and months without ever making an arrest. The evidence was there, just waiting for the right technology. A May 2001 lab report by analyst Sharon Polakowski revealed that all DNA samples collected from Fields' body came from a single unknown male contributor. The profile was entered into the Wisconsin DNA Databank, the Convicted Felons Database, and the National CODIS system, the three primary tools law enforcement had at their disposal. No match came back from any of them. 5 suspects were tested over the following years, and each was eliminated. Additional testing in 2005 on previously unsubmitted items from the original evidence collection matched the same male profile, confirming it was one person. The case was reassigned in 2005 and again in 2012, with fresh eyes reviewing every lead and every interview. Nothing moved. The person responsible simply was not in the system. How does someone leave their DNA at a scene, have it entered into every available database, and still remain invisible for over 2 decades? In August 2020, Racine Police Chief Art Howell ordered the case re-examined. Investigator Chris Blackmore took over, working alongside DCI Special Agent Neil McGrath and FBI Agent Sarah Deemron. In April 2021, Wisconsin State Crime Lab analyst Natalie Fisher confirmed enough DNA extract remained for investigative genetic genealogy analysis. The sample was sent to Othram Incorporated in the Woodlands, Texas, for forensic-grade genome sequencing. In January 2022, a familial DNA search identified an individual who was the parent, brother, or son of the contributor. That person's son was eliminated. His brother was eliminated. The father remained. His name was Lucas Asensio Alonso. FBI agents located him in Birmingham, Alabama, and later learned he had traveled to Zion, Illinois. On February 21, 2023, the day before the 23rd anniversary of the incident, investigators collected a DNA swab from Alonso during a traffic stop via search warrant. Analyst Polakowski confirmed the match. 1 in 1 quadrillion probability of a random match. Alonso, 66 at the time of arrest, had no prior criminal record of any kind. He had never been fingerprinted. He had never had his DNA collected. He had met Linda Fields at a local bar on the night she passed away. According to his statement to investigators, they left the bar together with 2 other people and were dropped off near the lakefront area around Lake Avenue. He admitted to becoming angry during an encounter and choking her, acknowledging that he did so multiple times. He claimed he thought she was still alive when he walked away. Whether that was true or not, Linda Fields was found beneath that pine tree 2 days later, and Alonso went on living his life for another 23 years. He had ties to both Illinois and Mexico, and was described by prosecutors as a significant flight risk. He was detained at his workplace in Racine on March 6, 2023, and charged with 1 count of first-degree intentional taking of life. Bail was set at $1 million cash. He pleaded not guilty on July 26, 2023. The trial was originally set for April 2024, then pushed to August. As of the most recent available reporting, no public verdict or sentencing has been announced. If convicted, Alonso faces life in prison. For 23 years, Lucas Alonso lived his life without consequence because his DNA was not in any criminal database. It took a new kind of science to find him. But the next case sat cold even longer, 36 years, and solving it required digging up the answer from a grave in Texas. Donna Sue Hyatt. On July 8, 1987, 38-year-old Donna Sue Hyatt was found on her living room floor at 708 North Elm Street in Carlsbad, New Mexico. Her daughter discovered the body at approximately 11:40 in the evening. Donna Sue had been harmed, stabbed, and strangled. Earlier that evening, witnesses had seen her with a tall man leaving a nearby store on foot at approximately 9:15. Donna Sue was a member of the First Baptist Church and the Christian Women's Club. Her family described her as a loving daughter, sister, mother, and grandmother, who was always friendly, chatty, and sunny. She had 2 daughters, Angela and Michelle, a mother, a father, and 2 sisters. The case was named Carlsbad's Crime of the Week, with a $500 reward. It led nowhere. The Carlsbad Police Department conducted a thorough investigation, following up on numerous leads across the community. There were plenty of suspects, both people in Donna Sue's personal life and individuals in the larger Carlsbad area, but not a single one could be conclusively linked to the evidence. The original officer's careful preservation of crime scene materials would prove critical decades later. But in the moment, no technology existed to extract answers from what they had collected. DNA testing in 2010 temporarily revived the case, but failed to produce a match in any available database. The trail went cold once more. 36 years would pass before anyone had a name to attach to what happened on North Elm Street. How do you solve a case when the person responsible has been gone for over 3 decades? In this case, you dig them up. Carlsbad detectives Joey Landgraf and Tim Nice sent preserved crime scene evidence to Othram Incorporated for forensic-grade genome sequencing. Othram built a comprehensive DNA profile, which was then used by the FBI's Forensic Genetic Genealogy team to develop investigative leads. Those leads pointed to a man named Michael Ruff Wigley, someone who had been investigated in the early 1980s for 2 separate incidents of harm against women in Central Texas, was convicted in one and served prison time. But there was a significant obstacle. Wigley had passed away in a traffic accident in 1989, just 2 years after taking Donna Sue's life. He could never be questioned. He could never sit in a courtroom. He could never look Donna Sue's daughters in the eye and be held accountable. But he could still be identified. Investigators obtained a search warrant to exhume Wigley's body from a cemetery in Amarillo, Texas, a process that required legal coordination across 2 states. DNA extracted from the remains was tested using Othram's specialized KINS-SNP testing protocol, which positively and definitively confirmed Michael Ruff Wigley as the person responsible for what happened at 708 North Elm Street 36 years earlier. Witnesses also confirmed that Wigley had been present in Carlsbad during the time of the incident, placing him in the right city on the right night. The case was officially closed and solved on April 11, 2023. No prosecution was possible. The person responsible had been gone for 34 years by the time his name was confirmed. Carlsbad Mayor Dale Janway stated that the case was a true testimony to the fact that justice can prevail through the hard work and dedication of officers and the community. Donna Sue Hyatt's daughters, Angela and Michelle, had waited 36 years to hear a name. They got one. They got confirmation. They got the truth. They just could not get a courtroom or a verdict or a sentence. The case was featured on Investigation Discovery's Bloodline Detectives and the DNA ID podcast. Wigley was already gone before science could catch up to what he had done. But the next case is different because when investigators finally identified the person responsible after 35 years, he was very much alive. And what he did when they came for him told its own story. Kathy Swartz. On December 2, 1988, in Three Rivers, Michigan, 18-year-old Mike Warner came home from work around 3:30 in the afternoon to the apartment he shared with his fiancée, 19-year-old Kathy Sue Swartz, and their infant daughter, Courtney. He noticed traces on the stair railing. The baby was crying in her crib, unharmed. Kathy's body was found in another bedroom. She had been beaten, stabbed multiple times, strangled, and had her throat cut. The scene was extraordinarily disturbing evidence smeared up the railing and against the walls. The person responsible had written, "I was here," at the scene. A fingerprint was found on her pink GTE telephone. There was no forced entry. Kathy Swartz was 19 years old. She was a single mother engaged to be married the following June. She bowled in a league with her mother every week. Her father ran the pro shop at the local bowling alley. She loved hunting with her dad and was an exceptional artist. Friends described her as sweet, caring, a wonderful mother, and confident in her ability to raise a child on her own despite being so young. She was a tomboy with a sharp sense of humor. She and Mike Warner were planning their wedding. It was 3 weeks before baby Courtney's first Christmas. And now she was gone. And the person who took her from that apartment had left behind a message, a fingerprint, and a bloody footprint, yet still managed to vanish. Who walks into someone's unlocked apartment in the middle of the day, does this, writes a message, and then disappears for 35 years? Warner was initially suspected, but quickly cleared he was confirmed at work during the time frame, and the fingerprint found at the scene did not match his prints. All family members on both sides were fingerprinted and eliminated one by one. A former boyfriend of Kathy's was charged, but later cleared as well when the evidence did not hold up. Over the years that followed, thousands of people across the Three Rivers area were interviewed and fingerprinted, an extraordinary effort for a small community. Not a single match was found. An FBI behavioral profile suggested the person responsible likely lived in the area and may have known the victim. In 2012, the crime scene DNA was entered into CODIS, still no result. Students from Western Michigan University's Cold Case program later took on the project of digitizing the massive 10,000-plus page case file. In the course of that work, one name appeared on just a single page of all those reports: Robert Waters. But at the time, he was never investigated as a suspect. He was simply a name on a piece of paper, buried in a mountain of documents. In May 2022, the Michigan State Police Forensic Lab sent the case to Othram Incorporated. Using forensic-grade genome sequencing and publicly available databases, including GED Match Pro, Othram identified the children of John and Judith Waters, 4 brothers from the Three Rivers area. One was already in CODIS and eliminated. 2 voluntarily gave DNA and were cleared. Othram confirmed the contributor was 100% a sibling. The remaining brother was Robert Waters, living in Beaufort, South Carolina. On April 30th, 2023, search warrants were executed at his home. His fingerprint positively matched the print on Kathy's phone. His DNA and footprint also confirmed matches. Robert Odell Waters, 53 at the time of arrest, had grown up in the Three Rivers area and was a childhood friend of Mike Warner. They had been classmates together at Three Rivers High School. About 1 month before the incident, Warner had invited Waters and his girlfriend to visit the apartment, giving Waters direct knowledge of the layout and the fact that the door was often left unlocked. After Kathy's passing, Waters never surfaced as a suspect. He left Michigan, relocated to Beaufort, South Carolina, and built an entirely new life. He ran a successful plumbing business. He was married with children. He lived in a $500,000 home in a quiet neighborhood. For 35 years, he was never fingerprinted. He never had his DNA collected. He never appeared in any criminal database. He lived as a respected member of his community, while the fingerprint he left on a dead woman's telephone sat in a case file in Michigan, waiting. He was arrested on April 30th, 2023, and charged with open taking of life. Just 5 days and 8 hours later, on May 6th, Waters was found gone in his cell at the Beaufort County Detention Center. He had used a bedsheet. He was not on watch. On the table in his cell, investigators found Bible-based pamphlets about forgiveness. Chief Bowling stated that forensic evidence confirmed Waters acted alone and was responsible. For 35 years, Robert Waters lived as a respected businessman, a husband, and a father, while the fingerprint he left on a pink telephone sat in a case file waiting for him. But the next case required something even more creative than genealogy databases, because the DNA match came from a piece of chewing gum spit out on a bike path. Barbara Tucker. On the evening of January 15, 1980, 19-year-old Barbara Mae Tucker was heading to an evening class at Mount Hood Community College in Gresham, Oregon. She had called her mother earlier that day, hoping class would let out early so she could visit a friend for ice cream. Near the campus parking lot, she was taken, harmed, and beaten to the point of losing her life. Multiple witnesses driving past on Kane Drive that night saw a woman running out of a wooded area, waving her arms frantically with a bloody face. One witness saw a man crouching in the bushes, watching. But not a single person stopped their car. Some later said they thought it was a college prank. The man was seen emerging from the bushes and pulling Tucker back into the woods. Her body was found the next morning, rolled into a patch of brush between Kane Road and the parking lot, with her purse and school books lying nearby. She never made it to class. Barbara Tucker was the youngest of 7 siblings, born into a large and close-knit family. At 5'11", she was a natural athlete who played basketball at Cleveland High School and was deeply involved in student organizations. She was studying business at the community college and was described by her family as a free spirit, strong-willed, independent, hard-working, and dedicated with a sharp mind. Her mother, Louise Tucker, never stopped fighting for answers. She maintained contact with police and the district attorney's office for the rest of her life, keeping handwritten records of every conversation and every lead. She wrote in her notes, "If it takes 10 years, I don't care. I just can't let it rest." Louise passed away in 1995 without seeing justice. Barbara's father, Albert Tucker, passed in 1989. He could never bring himself to talk about what happened to his daughter. In the end, it took 44 years. DNA technology did not exist in 1980. Evidence collected during the autopsy was preserved. In 2000, the samples were sent to the Oregon State Police Crime Lab, which developed a profile, but no match was found. Then Gresham Police engaged Parabon Nanolabs in Virginia, where C.C. Moore, Parabon's chief genetic genealogist, led the genealogy work. A critical tool was Parabon's snapshot phenotype prediction, which predicted the person responsible had red hair with extremely high confidence, the most confident red hair prediction Parabon scientists had ever produced. Moore stated, "That helped because it made me focus on one particular line of the family and follow that red hair down. And then I landed in Oregon." By March 2021, Moore identified Robert Plimpton as the suspect. Gresham police placed him under surveillance and observed him spit out chewing gum while biking along the Sandy River. Detectives collected the gum. The Oregon State Police Crime Lab confirmed the DNA matched the 1980 evidence. Robert Arthur Plimpton was just 16 at the time of the incident, a student at Reynolds High School in Troutdale, Oregon, with no known connection to Barbara Tucker whatsoever. But his subsequent record revealed a pattern that made the connection undeniable in hindsight. In 1985, he was convicted of kidnapping after grabbing a woman named Patricia Spangler off the street in broad daylight and attempting to bind her with tape. He received a sentence of 30 months. Over the following years, he accumulated DUI convictions, charges for misconduct, restraining orders filed by women in his life, and in 1997 was accused of an additional serious offense against a woman, though those charges were ultimately dismissed. At the time of his arrest for Tucker's case, Plimpton was 58 years old, living in Troutdale as an out-of-work river guide just miles from where he had taken Barbara's life 4 decades earlier. A bench trial before Judge Amy Baggio ran from February 26th to March 15th, 2024. He was found guilty of first-degree taking of life and 4 counts of second-degree. On October 3rd, 2024, Judge Kelly Skye sentenced him to life in prison with a minimum of 40 years, double the mandatory minimum, reflecting the severity and cruelty of the act. Patricia Spangler, the woman he had kidnapped in 1985, testified at sentencing and told the court, "I could have easily been his next victim." Defense attorneys have stated they intend to appeal. A piece of chewing gum on a bike path ended a 44-year search. But the next case was solved by something even smaller: 4 arm hairs found on a body in a Montana marsh. And the man those hairs belonged to did not survive long enough to see the inside of a courtroom. Danielle Hutchins. On Saturday, September 21st, 1996, 15-year-old Danielle Hutchins left her home in Belgrade, Montana, a small city near Bozeman in Gallatin County, around 11 in the morning after a family argument. She told her mother she wanted to drive to the Cameron Bridge fishing access site on the Gallatin River to blow off some steam. She had injured her left knee while dancing at a street dance weeks earlier and was wearing a knee brace. She drove her own truck to the site. When she did not return by afternoon, her mother and a friend went looking. They found her truck unlocked in the parking lot with her water bottle and car keys sitting nearby, but no sign of Danielle. The Gallatin County Sheriff's Office was called around 5 in the afternoon. Search and rescue volunteers combed the area around the fishing access site until darkness made it impossible to continue. 2 brothers who lived near the site continued searching after everyone else stopped. One of them found Danielle's body face down in a shallow pool of water in a marshy area. The state medical examiner listed the cause as drowning, with the manner of death unknown. But evidence of harm and bruising was discovered on her body. Her younger sister, Stephanie, who was 12 at the time, later stated that Danielle had been forcibly held down in the marsh. 4 rootless arm hairs were found on her body and carefully preserved. The Gallatin County Sheriff's Office controversially declined to officially classify the case as a taking of life, listing the manner as unknown, despite clear evidence of harm on the body. That decision created lasting frustration for the family and hampered the investigation for decades, making it harder to allocate resources and pursue leads with the urgency the case deserved. Danielle's younger sister, Stephanie, became her tireless advocate, starting public campaigns and refusing to let the case disappear from public attention. She carried that fight for 28 years. How long does a family have to wait for answers when the system will not even call what happened by its proper name? And what happens when the person responsible turns out to be someone no database in the country would have ever flagged? In 2019, the Sheriff's Office renewed efforts. In March 2023, private investigator Tom Elfmont, a retired LAPD captain, and Sergeant Court Depweg of the Newport Beach Police Department were brought in. The 4 rootless arm hairs were sent to Astria Forensics in California for forensic genome sequencing, producing a partial DNA profile. The profile returned no CODIS matches, so it was sent to Parabon Nano Labs, where genealogist C.C. Moore connected the DNA to all 4 grandparents of a man named Paul Hutchinson. On July 23, 2024, Elfmont and Depweg approached Hutchinson outside the Bureau of Land Management office in Dillon, Montana, where he worked as a fisheries biologist. During a nearly 2-hour interview, Hutchinson displayed extreme nervousness, sweating profusely, chewing on his hand, and slumping in his chair when shown Danielle's photograph. Approximately 10 hours later, Hutchinson was found gone from a self-inflicted wound. DNA collected from his body was sent to the Montana State Crime Lab, which confirmed a 100% match. Paul Nathaniel Hutchinson, approximately 55 at the time of identification, had been about 27 when Danielle was taken. He was a longtime fisheries biologist for the Bureau of Land Management with 22 years of service. He held a degree from Montana State University, was married for 22 years, had 2 adult children, and was described as an avid outdoorsman. He had absolutely no criminal record, not even a traffic violation. There was no connection whatsoever between him and Danielle Hutchins. It was a crime of opportunity committed by a man no one would have ever suspected. The case was announced as solved on August 8, 2024, by Gallatin County Sheriff Dan Springer. No charges could be filed. Law enforcement continues to examine Hutchinson's life for possible connections to other unsolved cases. Stephanie, Danielle's sister, finally had a name after 28 years of fighting. She just never got a courtroom, 4 arm hairs, and a man who could not hold his composure during a 2-hour interview. That is all it took to close a 28-year-old case. If you've made it this far and enjoy deep dives into the most shocking criminal cases, hit that subscribe button and don't forget to press the bell icon. But the next one sat cold for even longer, 50 years. And the person responsible had been invisible to genetic genealogy for one simple reason. He was adopted. Mary Schleiss. On February 15, 1974, the day after Valentine's Day, 25-year-old Mary Kathleen Schleiss left her apartment in the uptown area of Minneapolis, Minnesota, and set out to hitchhike to an art show in Chicago, a common practice in 1974. She was an honors graduate of the University of Minnesota, described by her family as a brilliant, independent woman, a gifted artist, an equestrienne, a world traveler, and a scholar who was fluent in several languages. She had ambitious plans to teach and make a lasting impact through her art. She never made it to Chicago. A witness in rural Dunn County, Wisconsin, approximately 8 miles west of Eau Claire, saw a man throw a body from a vehicle on a rural road at the intersection of 408th Avenue and 990th Street in the township of Spring Brook. Mary's body was found in a snowy ditch. She had been stabbed more than a dozen times. Her purse and coat were never recovered. But a blue and orange stocking cap was found at the scene, a detail that seemed insignificant at the time, but would prove to be the single most important piece of evidence in the entire case. The witness described the suspect as a white male, about 6 feet tall, with auburn hair and a thick dark mustache, driving a gold-colored vehicle. An eyewitness, a physical description, a police sketch, a stocking cap left behind. And still, the case went nowhere for half a century. How is that possible? Detective Craig Kozer of Dunn County worked the case for over a decade. keeping Mary Schle's photograph on his desk as a daily reminder. In 2009, her body was exhumed for additional DNA testing. By 2011, investigators considered the I-5 serial offender Randall Woodfield as a possible suspect, but he was never charged. A partial DNA profile was developed from the stocking cap and entered into databases, no match. The real obstacle, it turned out, was something no one had anticipated. The person responsible had been adopted, making him invisible on known family trees. Standard genetic genealogy traces family lines through biological relatives. But when someone is adopted, those biological connections are hidden behind legal records and sealed files. It was a wall that stopped every investigator who hit it. In 2022, the Dunn County Sheriff's Office partnered with the Investigative Genetic Genealogy Center at Ramapo College in Mahwah, New Jersey, led by Professor David Gurney with Assistant Director Kyron Binder. This became the center's first case to deliver an arrest. The partial male DNA from the stocking cap was uploaded to Family Tree DNA and GED match. By fall 2023, a possible family line emerged. Investigators followed leads through Wyoming and Michigan, ruling out known male relatives one by one. Then, in fall 2024, another relative provided their genetic profile, and the final pieces fell into place. The suspect was John Keith Miller. On November 4th, 2024, what would have been Mary Schle's 76th birthday, Miller's DNA was confirmed as a match. John Keith Miller was 84 at the time of arrest and had been approximately 33 when he took Mary's life. His criminal history was extensive: 2 forgery convictions in the late 1950s, an attempted robbery conviction in Arizona, petty theft in California, and an armed robbery conviction that sent him to San Quentin Prison, from which he was released in May 1972. By 1973, city records placed a John Miller in Minneapolis. When confronted with the DNA evidence, Miller confessed. He admitted picking up Schle's while she was hitchhiking, making advances, and when she refused, grabbing a knife and stabbing her in the back more than a dozen times. He admitted the stocking cap was his. He also told investigators he thought he had gotten away with it because the car he was driving was blue, while the witness had described a gold-colored vehicle. Miller was arrested on November 7th, 2024, at his assisted living facility in Owatonna, Minnesota. He was extradited to Wisconsin and charged with first-degree taking of life. He pleaded no contest and was sentenced on March 27, 2025, to life in prison. The mandatory sentence for first degree in Wisconsin, plus restitution and extradition costs. Mary's niece, Nina Mary Schle's, told the court, "While no verdict can undo the pain of losing Mary, we take comfort in knowing the man responsible has been held accountable." Miller is also being investigated in connection with a 1972 case involving a young woman in Minneapolis who was last seen hitchhiking, a stocking cap left in a snowy ditch in 1974, 50 years of dead ends, and an 84-year-old man in an assisted living facility who thought the color of his car had saved him. But the next case was solved by a different kind of connection, a DNA profile that matched not through genealogy, but through a separate unsolved case in a completely different state. Stephen Edenfield. On the night of January 31st through February 1st, 1997, 41-year-old Stephen Wayne Edenfield, a longtime telephone company employee who had worked for GTE for approximately 18 years, had dinner with his brother and sister at his condominium at the Tampa Racket Club complex in Tampa, Florida. Before midnight, he left the complex and returned around 12:50 in the morning. At the gate, he told a security guard that the car behind him was also with him. The guard let both vehicles in, but did not get a clear look at the second driver. Within an hour, 3 neighbors heard sounds of a struggle and calls for help. Around 2 in the morning, the security guard saw a dark shadow near the apartment. The next morning, when Stephen failed to appear to cook breakfast for his hospitalized mother, something he did every single day, his brother James went to check on him. The door was closed, but unlocked. Inside were obvious signs of a struggle. Traces of evidence everywhere. Broken pieces of a statue, a television and stereo blaring, shattered furniture. Stephen's body was found in bed under a blanket. He had suffered stab wounds and blunt force trauma. On the bedroom wall, someone had written the word greed using evidence from the scene. A custom-made solid gold identification bracelet engraved with Stephen's name, a piece his mother had made for each of her children, had been stolen. Stephen Edenfield was an openly gay man in the 1990s who kept his dating life extremely private, even from his own family. That privacy made the investigation extraordinarily difficult. He had mentioned dating someone called Carlos, but investigators were never able to identify this person. The person in the second car at the gate was never found. What happens to a case when the victim's private life is so carefully hidden that even the people closest to him cannot help investigators piece together his final hours? The Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office struggled for years to develop leads. Clothing found at the scene, socks and a tank top, contained both the victim's traces and an unknown DNA profile, but no match could be made through any available database. The case was featured on the Sheriff's Office's Unfinished Business podcast in 2021 and again in 2024, with photographs of the stolen bracelet shared publicly in hopes someone might recognize it. In 2022, the Cold Case Unit sent evidence to Othram Incorporated for forensic-grade genome sequencing, funded by a Bureau of Justice Assistance grant. By 2024, a previously unknown DNA profile had been developed from the tank top. Then came the break. On January 10, 2025, the DNA profile was linked through an FBI database to a 2005 unsolved case in Waukegan, Illinois. The suspect in that case was a man named Brandon Gliha. On January 22, detectives discreetly collected Gliha's DNA in Tampa, where he was living. On January 31, 2025, exactly 28 years to the day after Stephen Edenfield's passing, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement confirmed the DNA match. On February 5th, Gliha was arrested on an unrelated Illinois forgery warrant. During booking, another sample matched evidence from the crime scene. Brandon Gliha was 47 at the time of arrest and had been approximately 19 when Stephen was taken. When confronted, he claimed a person named Chino had picked him up in a car and that the two of them had met Edenfield before following him home. He admitted throwing a statue at the victim and striking him, but denied the stabbing. The sheriff's office stated they were not investigating any other individuals in connection with the case. Gliha confessed. He was charged on February 24, 2025, with first-degree taking of life with a weapon and robbery with a deadly weapon. He is being held without bond at Falkenberg Road Jail in Tampa. The case is pending trial. A DNA profile from a tank top linked a 1997 case in Florida to an unsolved 2005 case in Illinois and led investigators to a man living quietly in the same city where the original act took place. But the next case is one of the most complex on this entire list because before they found the right person, 3 innocent men spent nearly 18 years behind bars for something they did not do. Teresa Fusco. On Saturday night, November 10, 1984, a young woman was last seen leaving the Hot Skates roller rink in Lynbrook, Nassau County, Long Island, at approximately 9:45 in the evening. She was crying. She had just been let go from her part-time job at the snack bar. Her home was 4 blocks away. She was walking. On December 5th, her body was found in a wooded area near the rink, unclothed, buried under leaves, debris, and shipping pallets. She had been harmed, beaten, and strangled with a ligature. Evidence collected during the examination revealed DNA from an unknown contributor. The case sent shockwaves through the tight-knit Lynbrook community. It was made worse by the fact that two other young women had gone missing nearby around the same time, creating what became known as the Lynbrook Triangle. The pressure on investigators was immense, and that pressure would lead to one of the worst miscarriages of justice in New York State history. Under enormous public pressure, Nassau County Police interviewed approximately 400 people. In March 1985, John Kogut, 21, was arrested after nearly 18 hours of interrogation that produced a coerced confession, a 7-page statement handwritten by a detective. The sixth version, after 5 earlier attempts, were never written down. Kogut implicated 2 other men, John Restivo, 26, and Dennis Halstead, 31. All 3 were convicted in 1986. Kogut received 31.5 years to life. Restivo and Halstead each received 33 years and 4 months to life. All 3 maintained their innocence from day one. The Centurion Ministries took up their cases in 1994. The Innocence Project joined in 1997. Multiple rounds of DNA testing over the following decade excluded all 3 men. In June 2003, after approximately 17 to 18 years of wrongful imprisonment, all 3 convictions were vacated. Kogut was retried in a 2005 bench trial and found not guilty with a landmark ruling that admitted expert testimony on false confessions for the first time in New York State. Charges against Restivo and Halstead were dismissed. In 2014, a federal jury awarded Restivo and Halstead $18 million each. 3 innocent men had lost nearly 2 decades of their lives, and the unknown DNA profile from the original evidence still could not be matched. The case went cold again. How do you go back to square one after 3 wrongful convictions, $18 million settlements, and 4 decades of pain? You go back to the DNA. In August 2023, Nassau County investigators sent preserved evidence to Othram Incorporated for advanced sequencing. Othram built a comprehensive profile, which the FBI's investigative genetic genealogy unit used to identify possible relatives. The trail led to a man named Richard Bilodeau. Investigators placed him under surveillance. In February 2024, they recovered a smoothie cup and straw he had discarded at a Suffolk County cafe. DNA from the straw was a 100% match with the 1984 crime scene evidence. Richard Bilodeau, 63 at arrest, had been 23 at the time of the original incident. In 1984, he had lived with his grandparents in Lynbrook, approximately 1 mile from both the roller rink and the victim's home. He told investigators he had operated a mobile coffee truck in the area. At the time of his arrest, he lived alone in Center Moriches, Suffolk County, working overnight shifts at a Walmart. He had no known prior criminal record and had spent 40 years without a single arrest. When questioned days before his arrest, he reportedly told investigators, "People got away with it back then." Nassau County District Attorney Donnelly responded publicly, "It's 2025, and I got you now." Bilodeau was arrested on October 14, 2025, and indicted on 2 counts of second-degree taking of life. He pleaded not guilty and was remanded to Nassau County Jail. His court-appointed attorney maintains his client's innocence, citing the history of 3 prior wrongful convictions in the same case. Bilodeau faces up to 25 years to life if convicted. The victim's father, Thomas Fusco, attended the arraignment and pulled a small photograph from his suit jacket pocket. Her mother passed away in 2019 without ever seeing an arrest. As of March 2026, the case is pending trial. 3 innocent men spent nearly 2 decades in prison. The real person responsible lived quietly for 40 years, working the overnight shift at a Walmart a few towns over. But the next case was solved by an even more unlikely path. Forensic sequencing of clothing preserved from a crime scene in rural Texas nearly 4 decades earlier. Ricky Herridge. On the night of Saturday, March 7th, 1987, 29-year-old Ricky Herridge went out in the Athens area of Henderson County, Texas, and never came home. The next afternoon, around 1 in the afternoon on March 8th, a man picking up beer cans along a creek bank discovered Herridge's body beneath a bridge on County Road 1500 near Walnut Creek. He had been shot multiple times. Clothing was collected from the scene and preserved. The circumstances of how he ended up at the bridge or who he had been with that night remained unclear. Herridge was a carpenter who was actively pursuing higher education at the time of his passing. His family had relocated to the Athens area from Anson, Texas, when he was an infant. His surviving sister, Virginia Herridge Culpepper, described him as the protector, the big brother, and the rock of the family. The kind of man who would confront a friend for using inappropriate language in front of his sister, even as adults. He had a daughter and a stepson. His mother, Annette, never stopped hoping for answers. The Henderson County Sheriff's Office investigated extensively, receiving numerous leads and developing multiple theories over the years. But no motive, no suspect, and no arrest ever materialized. The person ultimately identified was, in the sheriff's words, on nobody's radar. As original investigators retired one by one, the case languished. Virginia started a Facebook memorial page in 2015 to keep her brother's name in the public eye. In 2019, Sheriff Bodie Hillhouse ordered the case reopened. Clothing from the original 1987 scene was sent to Pure Gold Forensics in California, which extracted a traditional DNA profile and uploaded it to CODIS No Match. The Sheriff's Office then partnered with Season of Justice, a nonprofit that funds advanced forensic testing. In 2022, evidence was submitted to Othram Incorporated for forensic-grade genome sequencing. Othram's Forensic Genetic Genealogy Team, assisted by the FBI Dallas Violent Crimes Task Force, using advanced genealogical methods, produced investigative leads that pointed to a name: Dallas Reynolds Casanova. On November 7, 2025, the Henderson County Sheriff's Office announced the identification. Casanova had resided in Henderson County at the time of the incident. His DNA was confirmed present on Herridge's clothing. No known motive or relationship between the two men has ever been established. But there was a problem that was by now familiar in these cases. Casanova had passed away in 2008 in New Orleans, Louisiana. He could never face prosecution. Sheriff Hillhouse stated, "I personally feel like if it went before a jury in today's time, Dallas Casanova would have been convicted. Unfortunately, he is deceased, and we weren't able to bring him to justice." Mother Annette Herridge, who had waited 38 years, still wants to know why. Sister Virginia expressed gratitude but said plainly, "Case closed just doesn't do it for me. We still don't have justice." This was the 24th case in Texas solved using Othram technology. A name on preserved clothing from 1987. A man who had been gone since 2008. And a family that waited 38 years for a truth that still feels incomplete. But the final case on this list is the one that may stay with you the longest because it involves the youngest victim, the most disturbing perpetrator, and a single strand of hair that sat in an evidence locker for 3 decades before the technology existed to read it. Morgan Jade Violi. On July 24, 1996, in broad daylight during summer vacation, a young girl was playing outside with a friend in the parking lot of the Colony Apartments in Bowling Green, Kentucky. A man in a maroon Chevrolet van pulled in, exited the vehicle, and first tried to grab the other child, who escaped. He then grabbed Morgan Jade Violi, threw her into the back of the van, and sped away. Morgan's older sister Heather heard a scream and ran around to see the man sitting in the van. An adult witness described the vehicle and a license plate containing the letters MN. A composite sketch was produced. The FBI offered a $25,000 reward. Morgan Jade Violi loved to dance, sing, and tell her older sisters she was bigger than them. United States Attorney Bum Garner said at the press conference announcing the case's resolution, "She was more than the worst thing that happened to her. She was a daughter. She was a little sister." The gay person responsible drove south on Interstate 65, exited at White House, Tennessee, pulled over near a barn, and ended Morgan's life using his hand and a handkerchief. He left her body in the woods and discarded her clothes in a dumpster. Nearly 3 months later, on October 20th, 1996, skeletal remains were found by a woman walking near her home in woods in White House, Robertson County, Tennessee. The stolen van was found abandoned 2 days after the abduction at a truck stop in Williamson County, Tennessee. Fiber from Morgan's hair matched the van's seat cushion, but the person who drove it could not be identified. For 30 years, investigators worked the case without ever identifying a suspect. The FBI investigated extensively. Bowling Green police followed every lead. As recently as January 2026, they were still publicly soliciting tips. The case changed the way an entire city raised its children's churches, filled as safe gathering places. Parents stopped letting young ones play outside unsupervised. Retired Major Marieka Brown noted that random kidnappings are rare, and that rarity is precisely what made this case so frightening. The breakthrough came from a single strand of hair recovered from vacuum sweepings of the stolen van in 1996, preserved in an evidence locker for 3 decades. Due to recent advancements in forensic DNA testing at the FBI laboratory, a profile was extracted from that hair and run through the National CODIS database. Unlike every other case on this list, this one did not require genetic genealogy. CODIS returned a direct match to a man named Robert Scott Froberg, already in the system because he was currently incarcerated in Alabama. Froberg's criminal history was extensive and deeply alarming. In December 1988, he was convicted of armed robbery in Alabama and sentenced to 40 years. While in prison, officials found him with photographs of minors. In April 1996, he escaped from a work detail and fled across multiple states, robbing an elderly woman in Pennsylvania along the way. In May 1996, he was found hiding in a structure near a residential area in Dayton, Ohio, making contact with a young boy. He was apprehended nearby but escaped again from a Pennsylvania facility in July by climbing a rain spout to the roof. On July 23rd, he stole the maroon van from Dayton, less than half a mile from where his parents lived. The next day, he took Morgan. On February 24, 2026, a Bowling Green detective and an FBI agent traveled to Montgomery, Alabama, to interview Froberg. He waived his rights and confessed in full detail to the kidnapping and taking of Morgan Jade Violi. He was 62. He had no connection to the victim. He was a stranger passing through Bowling Green on the interstate, heading south. He pulled off the highway, and a little girl happened to be playing in a parking lot. A federal criminal complaint was filed on February 26th 2026, charging Froberg with 1 count of kidnapping, resulting in a fatality under federal statute, a charge that carries potential penalties of life in federal prison or the ultimate federal penalty. United States Attorney Bumgarner called it one of the most significant announcements by the office in at least a decade. As of March 2026, the prosecution is in its earliest stages with arraignment pending. Morgan Jade Violi was buried at Bowling Green Garden Cemetery 30 years ago. A strand of hair from a stolen van finally spoke her name. This was all from our side today. Thanks for watching. Click here to check out another video.